Welcome to the NFL Scouting Combine. Andrew Callahan here alongside Alex Barth, 98.5 The Sports Hub, which probably explains why I'm doing a radio welcome here as opposed to just a regular podcast where I sit in my office and I go, oh, it's around Tuesday at 2:28, which is exactly what it is here today. Barth is on a couple months early. We'll have you back, talk some draft.
Love it.
And I think I owe you a beer, as I told you earlier this week, because the last time we had Barth on, we were placing, not real bets, but naming players we thought the Patriots would most likely draft. Since then, of course, they've changed the head coach, rearranged the front office, and we are now, again, trying to guess who the Patriots will draft. But first, as I always try to do on the show, I want to take you behind the scenes, what this is like. And I would like you to do this as your first-time visit to the Combine, which, of course, included a basketball game as we talk football with everyone nonstop. What do you see? What do you hear? What is this like for you?
It's a lot. What is it? Is it even 3 o'clock yet? It's 2:30, and this is one of the busiest days of my life so far. So this has been quite a bit, but it's unbelievable. I was telling some people the other night, I went to the winter meetings for baseball when I was in college, and it's like that. Take the MLB and NFLify it, right? It's a lot of football everywhere you look. You're seeing people you normally see on TV, or you hear about, or this and that, and then within that, there's a ton of information coming in, and you get done listening to Mike Vrabel and you check your phone and here's an update on Ronnie Stanley. Here's an update on Travis Hunter. This guy said this about this guy. So this really is, when people say this kicks off the offseason, yeah, the tone was set today.
He's so happy, and it makes me so happy that he's so happy finally here. Here's the plan here for today. We are going to pick Barth's brain a little bit more about the Combine. I will tell you about things that I've heard and seen already around here. Later this week, Doug and I will recap everything that we've heard and seen, which I will record Friday night. I don't know when it's going to go up, but this will be everything in an article that we annually have for the Herald about scuttlebutt, rumors, and things that we picked up, which has already begun. So if you want to know all of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, got a little bit here for you, but we're going to save it to the end of the week. In the meantime, we're setting the scene here today as coaches, GMs, media members walk all around us. We're in a giant cavernous room inside the convention center, which is dead center downtown Indianapolis. There's a wall of curtains. On the other side is where all the podiums. So if you're watching at home, Mike Vrabel here today, and we'll get to takeaways from his press conference in a second. That's where all of them are. They're about 8 to 10 over there. Head coaches speak, GMs speak. We'll have the prospects starting 8 a.m. tomorrow. Abdul Carter will be there. I may not be, depending on how the night goes from Penn State. But aside from that, I mean, what else are you looking forward to today, tomorrow, immediately as we kind of settle in here to the Combine? Because it is a long game.
Yeah. And we'll call it like pre-workouts, right? Pre-players getting on the field. Elliott Wolf's obviously the big one. He'll talk tomorrow. We'll get some information from him. I think in terms of the players speaking, you miss Abdul Carter. I'm not really sure what we're going to learn from Abdul Carter at the podium. Like, he'll say what teams he's met with. We'll hear about his transition from linebacker to edge rusher last year. But he kind of put on tape who he is. He's not a guy that has a ton of variance. Travis Hunter's podium is the big one of the week to me in that regard, because we know how the league views Travis Hunter at this point. The reporting is most, but not all teams view him as a corner. I think it was the Browns GM said today that they view him as a receiver. So that's one team ahead of the Patriots. I wonder if Elliott Wolf will get asked that tomorrow. Maybe we find out how the Patriots view Travis Hunter.
Wednesday.
That's right. So we know how the league views him. But how does Travis Hunter view himself? And where does that factor in, right? Is he open to it? Is he just going to show up and say, yeah, I'll do whatever, wherever? And he'll probably say that, but we'll also hear from him meeting with teams, right? Would he rather play corner? Would he rather play receiver? Is he going to want to play both ways? If what he wants doesn't line up with what a team wants, is he going to go with it? Will it be something that maybe becomes an issue? And do teams look at that and say, well, we can't get on the same page as this guy. Maybe he falls down our board. Travis Hunter's tremendously talented. No prospect is perfect, and any player is going to need to develop in the NFL in order to hit their ceiling. Travis Hunter's floor is pretty high, but for where you're going to draft him, you want him to get up near that ceiling. To be able to do that, everybody needs to be on the same page with the development plan. How realistic is that? We're going to kind of find that out starting when he hits the podium.
He's so happy. I'm just going to say it again. The man is in his element. He's here talking draft prospects. I'm here to talk more gossip and rumors. And as you were talking, Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, walked behind us. So if you saw that in the camera shot, they're among the teams that I will tell you is going to have a sit down with the Patriots this week. And I can't tell you the extent of the details and the conversations that will be had. I will say this, though, as an example of something that is of note, of course, because Myles Garrett, as much as Andrew Berry just shot this down, we have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. The Patriots, as I've argued on this podcast, a lot of cap space, a lot of assets, can make a big play for him. Will they discuss that? Maybe, maybe not. But they will not be the only team that the Patriots speak with this week, because this is the time that all the teams get together and say hello, or sometimes just have beers, as discussed a week ago with Mike Giardi about what's it really like. Sometimes the Combine is Mike Vrabel, Bill O'Brien, Doug Marrone having beers at an Irish bar that we took you to last night, along with a couple of other folks.
I'll even say with the Browns and Patriots, too, there's that connection with Mike Vrabel having been there last year. So
and Elliot Wolf.
And Elliot Wolf having been there in the past, too, yep.
Yeah, so something to keep an eye on. All right. Big thumbs up from everyone I talked to so far about Mike Vrabel. I'm going to leave that there. Mike Vrabel, when he speaks here today, there is a clarity about him. There is a command. There is a confidence. None of this is particularly new. But for a team that lacked vision and specifics about how to fulfill this vision, it was giving you a little bit more confidence today to hear him say, and this is the big takeaway of the day, the Patriots will be aggressive in free agency. And if they swing and miss, they got a plan B, and they got a plan C, and a plan D. Is this nearing, given the burn some cash comments of a year ago, ringing in your ears like the interest kings of football? Or is this you're a full believer, ready to get hurt again?
So I actually asked Jeff Howe about this just before on the Patriots Hub podcast, which is up on 98.5thesportshub.com. The difference between burn some cash and what Mike Vrabel said today, and what Mike Vrabel said today is hardly a guarantee, right? It's easy to say that today, you got to make it happen, but
he's confident. Those are the words that we should specify.
He's confident. He said he said hopefully and confident. So, but he's done this before. He knows what it takes. He knows what goes into spending money in free agency, putting a team together, this and that. And he's also, we think at least, in charge of it. It certainly seems like if he doesn't have true final say, something very close to it, where last year it was Elliot Wolf running the roster. So when Gerard Mayo said that, well, he wasn't necessarily, and it doesn't excuse it, but he wasn't necessarily in a position to totally follow through on that. So, it is kind of, I'll believe it when I see it, but it holds a lot more weight to me, a comment like that coming from somebody with Mike Vrabel's resume than Gerard Mayo's.
Yeah, and this gets into the conversation, too, of the intent that you could have to be aggressive and also, like you said, the execution. Part of that is your ability to sign those players and whether or not you're a pull and you're a free agent destination, or if you're a trade destination like Brandon Ayuk a year ago, just because I don't want to go there. You can take your $30 million annually and shove it. I want to stay here for less, and he did. That might have changed right now with Mike Vrabel in charge and a whole cast of coaches that you go, oh, they've actually done things around the league and can work together, and a quarterback in place that you go, if you're a free agent, I want to play with him versus, well, we'll sign a rookie and we'll see how it goes. So things have changed, but it might not be good enough, to your point. I think the point about Vrabel being in charge, something he hinted at today when asked point blank, hey, who has final say for the roster? You're like, well, I wouldn't be here at the Combine in Indianapolis. I wouldn't have taken the job had I not had full confidence that I'd have impact on the roster. It's like, yeah, he's got the juice. And I can tell you, even though people in the front office who might have lost a little bit of power, and this trickles all the way down to the bottom because you have less say if your boss is not the one making the calls, they're happy Mike Vrabel's here. It's specific, it's detailed. To your point, he knows what he wants, and the Patriots are in the process of trying to figure out whether or not they can get it.
And the other thing about that, and I forget, so Vrabel talked to the podium, and then he talked to us separately outside.
Yeah, let's stop there for a second because you're right. 11 o'clock here today, or excuse me, 10:15, spoke at one of the podiums, which is behind all the cameras here, the other side of the wall. And as some teams do, they make the head coach available just to the local media, which today is basically, like, I don't know.
10 of us?
Yeah, no, it was 20. Including cameras, there were more than 20 of us.
Right,
so it's part of it is just to give, a favor to the local media who bothered to travel, cover the team, as opposed to you have a whole cluster of reporters who are asking about things that like, oh, do you remember your college roommate who now works for the Jaguars? What do you think of this guy? Whatever. Everyone has access to these coaches. So there was a second session with Mike Vrabel, 15 minutes, and we got more Patriots specific in that sit down.
So, and I think it was in that one where he said he was kind of asked about free agency, and I think there's a difference between aggressive and reckless. And you can be aggressive in free agency. Aggressive is good, reckless isn't good. He talked about, we're going to be, and I'm paraphrasing, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to pursue the players that we're looking for. But he said, you got to have a plan B because you're not going to get everybody, right? They're not going to sign Trey Smith and Ronnie Stanley and Javon Holland and Michael Williams and Josh Sweat and on and on and on, Milton Williams, whatever, right? So they can want to do that, but that's even for the money they have. They have a lot of assets. It's not exactly infinite. So he talked about, we're going to be aggressive, but we have to have a plan B for the guys we don't get. We have to have plan C, and you have to be able to adapt. And that was something I felt like was an issue last year. Mm-hmm. Like when there weren't that many tackles available, but tackles start going off the board, and suddenly you're just signing who's left at positions you need regardless of whether or not they're a fit. I liked hearing that, there's not just going to be one off-season plan. There's going to be contingencies, and there's going to be, all right, this guy instead of this guy and things like that. That's how you have a complete off-season because, again, You can list off the 5 best free agents and say, hope the Patriots sign 4 of them. That's all well and good. They're maybe a better destination than last year. They are a better destination than last year. They're still not the best destination. There's still going to be guys that want to go elsewhere, and you got to be able to adapt off of that.
So Mike Vrabel saying they're going to be aggressive in free agency, which,
Yeah.
again, you have to wait and see, is the big takeaway. The fact that he, again, hinted at having roster control is probably the second biggest takeaway, which we all danced and heard, and the rumblings or the nuggets or the whispers or whatever you want to call them has all indicated this. And I've said before on this show, I think Elliott Wolf would be open to promotion. That seems to be, or excuse me, a demotion to stick around, because what does he love to do best? It's scout, and he can still do that. From your perspective, though, does that make you more confident, less confident that a guy who got a little bit more roster control in Tennessee and that happened to coincide with the 2 worst seasons of his tenure with the Titans?
It all comes down to that A.J. Brown trade, right? And how involved was he with that? Because that's really what tanked that thing. They never recovered from trading A.J. Brown. And look, John Robinson was let go. It seemed pretty directly because of that trade. Was it the Monday after A.J. Brown lit up the Titans on Sunday Night Football? So, and it again, these are rumblings, it's not reporting, but like Mike Vrabel maybe wasn't super happy with the way that all played out. So the question becomes, is it lesson learned or is it a tactic? Now, the Patriots don't have an A.J. Brown to trade right now. So it would be nice to get to the point where we get to have that conversation. But the fact that he's been a head coach and saw how roster decisions can, and obviously roster decisions can impact the team, right? But he was a head coach that was directly impacted by something the front office did, and it changed the trajectory of his career. So he understands the weight of it. That makes me a little more optimistic.
Yeah, and they leaked talent in other places too. It wasn't just like, I mean, if you were doing a history of Mike Vrabel's Tennessee tenure, you have the peak, you have the rise, AFC Championship game, #1 seed, coach of the year, all that, and then the fall with the 2 losing seasons at the end, and that would be kind of the line of demarcation. But when you start Will Levis at quarterback, when the corpse of Ryan Tannehill is right before him, like, you have issues that are bigger than losing a receiver.
Well, so that's the other thing. Their second biggest issue is the quarterback position. Again, not if Mike Vrabel's here long enough that they have to worry about finding a new quarterback based on who we think Drake May is going to be, it's probably going to be okay. Yeah.
Now, to the point about the #1 receiver, Mike Vrabel took a couple questions about this here today, and there were a couple things that caught my attention, because the first answer he gave in terms of, how important is it, how can you find them, was, well, you usually have to draft them. To which everyone at home is going, well, we're out of luck. You can't do that. You're the Patriots. But they did that in Tennessee. You mentioned A.J. Brown, second-round pick, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 19 touchdowns. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler now, obviously traded to Philadelphia. He seems to realize, like the rest of us do, this is a problem. The drought cannot go on for much longer in New England without a #1 receiver. But to the point that he made about, well, we got to have plan B, C, and D in free agency, be able to pivot, he's willing to adapt without one. To me,
what did he say? That they're not just walking around here? If they are, let me know.
Yeah, if you find one, let him know. Which, of course, we aren't, because I don't know if we'll get to Ted McMillan. But anyway, the point is they're exploring every single avenue. And they understand that everyone else is doing the same thing. So when that happens, you're less likely to get what you want, which in this case is a #1 wide receiver. But the way he talked about it at least left an impression on me, Alex, that there's a little bit more urgency there. Versus, well, if we get one, great. If not, he's like, no. I've seen the impact that A.J. Brown has.
Yeah.
I want to go get those guys. It's just going to be hard, because that's the nature of getting good players at premium positions in the NFL.
And I think you combine it with everything else he said, and the plan is for them to get that guy. The plan is not to continue to try to make this work with, we've talked about like a bunch of #2 or a bunch of #3 receivers.
Sometimes even #2 is kind, unless you want the pejorative sense, and then it's exceptionally accurate.
Put it together in the aggregate, right, to quote Moneyball. That doesn't seem to be in their plans. Does that mean they get that guy this year? And I don't think they're locked in on, okay, well, we need to get, the best wide receiver available, even if he maybe doesn't fit that description of the #1 coverage dictating guy. Well, no, he's the best available, so we're just going to add him, right? Like, that's how you get into trouble. And he did talk about he doesn't want a long rebuild. Nobody wants a long rebuild. Obviously, people want to win. He's here to win. The fans want to win. But I also think there's an understanding of where this roster is. You're not going to be able to get it to the point where they're, a top 5 roster in the league in 1 year. That's probably a 2-year process. So they want that wide receiver, but they also acknowledge that if that guy's not available, I don't think they're going to, trick themselves into thinking, just off the top of my head, 31-year-old Stephon Diggs off a torn ACL.
Pass.
Right?
Hard pass.
They're not going to talk themselves into, no, he's still the guy he was in Buffalo because we need him to be the guy he was in Buffalo. They're not going to talk themselves into Cooper Kupp at 32 years old, who hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2021. No, we can get him back there, right? I think that it's going to be, I don't know, does aggressive patience make sense?
No, but I like it anyway. That's totally fine by me. Mike Vrabel also said the roster will look vastly different at the end of August, which is not that far away when you really think about it. I want to know what you think about that, but only after this break. All right, timeout. Enough about free agency. Enough about the draft. No more mocks, no more rumors, no more whispers, no more mailbag. It is time to talk, not about football or anything like that. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because when I'm not on this podcast and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the Celtics, or it could be a hockey game, or it could be a baseball game. Sox are just around the corner. I am playing Prize Picks, and I am winning. And I would like you, as someone who supports this podcast, to win a little bit too. Because right now at Prize Picks, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash and run your game all season long. When you build your lineup, you know the deal. 2 to 6 players, all right? Every single time you go to Prize Picks, online or on the app, you'll see a player, and they'll have a stat. And all you have to do with your lineup is pick the player, go more or less on that stat. It could be Jason Tatum, 5 threes. If you think he'll hit it more than 5 threes, he's going to hit more. If you think Kristaps Porzingis will have less than 18 points, hit less. Boom. That's a lineup right there. So 2 to 6 player stat projections over at Prize Picks. Basketball, hockey, baseball around the corner. Of course, football will be back too. And when you sign up today, if you're a new customer, here's the best part. You get $50. 5-0 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus 5-0. You just have to play. So sign up today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and you will get $50 instantly with the promo code CLNS after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Vastly different. Okay, to me this says, because we've heard him talk about these position groups more than any other position group since he was hired, offensive line, defensive line. And it's not only because of what Mike Vrabel wants and what's already in the cupboard, but if you're going to try to raise the level of competence for a team or raise the floor, you would do it by kind of getting better at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. I think that's where we'll see them attack in free agency in the draft. But the fact that he just admitted, like, hey, it almost doesn't matter what I think of the roster now. These guys aren't going to be around till August. It said, okay, they're really ready to uproot these things, and I think that's where they'll start as close to the line as possible.
Well, that really, just the comment itself stood out to me, and I've been big on this. You know, you hear fans call in on the radio or on Twitter like, yeah, bring 2 guys back, right? 80-something new players. 90 players is a lot. I don't think people realize how many players 90 is, and even 53. And you look at they had pretty significant roster turnover last year, and I think it was 25, 26 new players on the roster.
40%.
The week before, 40%. So still under half. And that was a significant roster turnover. You want to talk about turning over 80, 85, 90% of the roster, that's usually a 2-3 year thing. But the way he said that, we might see something uncharacteristic. We might see something that you don't typically see because they have so many guys. Like last year, they re-signed everybody. They have these guys on multi-year deals. They only have 17 pending free agents. And I think it's less now because they've brought back a couple of the ERFAs. Like, it's going to be a lot. If they're going to turn the roster over with the conviction in which he said that, we're going to see an offseason that you don't typically see in terms of player movement.
Now you're getting me excited, which is this is dangerous. Trying to temper expectations for myself and everybody else listening.
You still got to bring in the right guys. You can turn over 80% of the roster. If you don't bring in good players, what does it matter?
Of course. And if you don't bring in the right coaches, sometimes it doesn't matter either, as we saw last year and the year before and the year before that. He did talk about the coaches here today, too.
Yep.
First question that Karen Gregan, the GOAT, asked at his press conference today. It sounds like we're going to get a lot of Karen leading off.
I think she's our leadoff hitter,
yeah. This is the Titans when he was tenure. I don't remember the name of the reporter, but he always allowed her to lead off down there.
We're in good hands there, though. I'm not worried about
it. Oh, of course. Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel, according to Mike Vrabel, had numerous conversations when he was in Cleveland last year because Josh wasn't under contract. So, of course, they could chat and plan and do all these different things. So, number one, I would like you to tell everyone at your station, this is not an ownership pick, and this is a very sensible pick. Guy's been an offensive coordinator, coached quarterbacks, developed quarterbacks, has a personal relationship with this guy. He's here because of all of those things, not because of who's at the top. Doesn't mean that Crafts don't love him, so please pass that along. Number two, I liked that he was open about how proud he was of the staff they built. Because on the surface, as much as we all can tell in February, and we've all had bad takes about coaches before and the potential of their units, it's great that he seemed to at least have the gravity to pull in the guys that he wanted, which to me gives me more confidence that in time he'll be able to do that with players as well.
And he mentioned, some guys are under contract with other teams, and you can't get them when you're trying to build a staff. So, I'm thinking, is there anybody in Cleveland, Tommy Rees, Chad O'Shea, he would have liked to bring over, but that he put a real vote of confidence into this group. And to your point about McDaniels, I want to talk about that too. Let's not forget I think it was late November, early December, before we knew Mayo was going to get fired. And it seemed unlikely at one point just because how rare coaches being one and done is overall. We were hearing Vrabel and McDaniels are a package. Vrabel and McDaniels are a package. So
Chicago. I mean, the Jets were never really realistic, but there were other destinations.
I think even Vegas at one point was thrown in for that duo. So it's absolutely that. And, yeah, the staff they've built behind him, it is new beyond McDaniels. It's all guys whose first time in New England, but it makes sense. They all fit together. On the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be Vrabel's defense. He told us Terrell Williams will be calling plays, which that was another one we'd heard rumblings, but we didn't know. But it's the Tennessee group back together. So everybody's going to be on the same page, synergy. Everybody's looking at the same thing. And on the offensive side, what is it? They have 4 quarterback coaches between McDaniels, Ashton Grant. Well, I'm like guys with quarterback experience. It's McDaniels, Ashton Grant. Downing was a quarterback's coach. 5, and then there are two positional assistants, and Ben McAdoo, who was a quarterback's coach on the other side. This is a staff for Drake May.
It is. And you mentioned Downing.
Yeah.
It's a guy who talked to someone with the Jets here today who had very positive things to say about Todd Downing, which, again, not a lot of guys are coming here to talk shit. It's kind of the nature of just like the league and business. But the point is, that's a guy who had been laid off, had gone a while, and is now going to a rival. Like, I think there's something to that. And a guy who also can kind of hone in his focus and lend the quarterback experience and credibility. But the point was made, hey, when we moved from Nathaniel Hackett to Todd Downing, that was an upgrade. Insert Nathaniel Hackett joke here. But the point is, I think that experience and talent, as I've said before, this is like the roster. I just want them to get coaches in the building, then figure it out. And disagreements are okay, which I'll pull this quote up from Phil Perry in a second because he listened to Mike, who was also on SiriusXM. But I'm with you to expound upon the Todd Downing point and the quarterback experience that's surrounding Drake May.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be quarterback friendly. We'll see where maybe they fill in other pieces down the line. The positive and negative with Downing is he's a guy that has a ton of experience with quarterbacks designing offenses. But for a team that struggled to develop wide receivers and might have to draft 1 or 2, he's never really done the technical side of it. And it does somebody come in as like an assistant receivers coach, maybe with a little more experience in that regard. But it's an impressive staff. I've seen people just kind of knee-jerk like, oh, it's the leftovers, et cetera. Oh, it's the Tennessee group, blah, blah. No, this is, and I think around the league, viewed as an impressive, I call it like a football brain trust. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree. The quote that I mentioned earlier that Phil had tweeted out, this is from Mike Vrabel on SiriusXM, quote, "The best staffs are the ones that have trust, that have loyalty to each other." He said it's good to have disagreement between staffers, settle on a plan, but then leave the room and sell it like their idea. So, again, there's a lot to coalesce here, as we've discussed, and it's done a lot basically until we got up to the combine. But indications from people close to these coaches, obviously Vrabel is going to express some sort of confidence, I think is all a good thing. Not to mention, I've said this too, these guys are at different points in their career where there's not a whole lot of leverage. Like Thomas Brown just went from offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator. You're the tight ends coach. You got the passing game coordinator title, but you got to come in here. You got to work your ass off. Doug Marrone, you were at Boston College as an offensive analyst. You want to go back to, all due respect, BC, or would you rather stay in the NFL, coach men, develop them, and try to build a winner again? Like, I think it's a motivated staff put together at the right time. Anything else from Mike Vrabel that we have not covered here today? Because you did mention there was some Ronnie Stanley news that I actually missed. Thanks to our pal Phil. It's right here in the Twitter that we can update to. It's not going to make everyone so happy.
I'm just pulling up my notes here. The one the way he. I said last year I thought some of the stuff about Mayo at the podium was overblown just because if they were winning, nobody would care, right? At the end of the day, if you're winning, you can look at Joe Mazzulla, right? He says a bunch of weird stuff at the podium. We love him for it. It's great. And the team wins, and that's part of it. But I think Vrabel's striking the right tone up there. Like he was asked about, you say you want to get back, winning the division is a goal. And what goes into that. And he talked about we have to win at home. We have to make Gillette Stadium a tough place to play. This team has been atrocious at home, to put it bluntly, over the last few years. Should the coach be focused so much on home games, road games? I don't know. But there's some part of me that just liked hearing that. Like, it's a basic football thing. You want to take care of business at home. But
how about that?
It used to be tough. Like, you hear Peyton Manning and these guys tell stories about what it was like to drive up Route 1 and see the stadium come over the line and what that would instill in you. And look, Brady and Bill aren't there anymore, obviously. But make it a tough place to go again. Like, it sounds like the bar's kind of low, but isn't it? And, like, if they can get that bar checked, that is a step in the right direction. They're probably not going to win the division this year. I'm sorry for breaking news. They're probably not. But if they can get back to being, all right, we're going to take care of business at home. We're going to take care of business against the bad teams we should beat, this and that. Like, that's a solid first step. And to just kind of hear that laid out, it was like, they're not just assuming it's all going to happen overnight, that there is a process in place. And while they are going to be aggressive and they don't want to go through a long rebuild, there's also recognition of there's going to be stages to get where they want to be.
Yeah, and as we've heard from people before, but someone echoed to me within the organization here today that the prevailing philosophy last year was just do the opposite of what Belichick would have done. But it doesn't really lead you anywhere, as we saw. When Mike Vrabel comes up and says, we're going to win the division, we're going to host playoff games, we're going to compete for championships. I don't have a timeline, but those are the things we're aiming for every single day. That's an outline. That's a vision. And when he says, this is what I need at outside linebacker, and they met with the edge guys, the defensive linemen last night, again, as we speak here Tuesday, they know exactly what they're looking for because he's done this, he's been in there before, and he understands what winning feels like and looks like. And it starts with being demanding and specific as he is at the podium, which, as among those who were critical of Gerard and said at the owners' meetings last year, he'll grow from this and spilled OJ and all that. It's your ability to convince people who in the media, by extension the fans, are willing and wanting to be persuaded. Right. If you couldn't do that, how am I going to trust you to command a room of alpha males? And obviously it didn't happen well enough with Gerard Mayo. All right, the Ronnie Stanley news I mentioned. Eric DeCosta, GM of the Ravens, spoke today. A lot of head coaches and GMs spoke here today. He was, quote, optimistic that we'll be able to get a deal done with Ronnie Stanley, who I've said, you could argue Alaric Jackson, the only proven above-average starter you could reliably count on for the next few years. Yep. And then John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Ravens, echoed that confidence later. So let's say Ronnie Stanley's off the board, dip into free agency here, and we'll pivot to what you want to see the rest of the week and get out of here. Where are you going at left tackle?
I mean, we got to wait till Sunday, right? Sunday morning, the arm length, Will Campbell. That's the big question.
No,
but
we don't have to wait. It's fine. As I've said before, the T-Rex ruled the whole world when dinosaurs roamed. It has the tiniest arms.
I still think it's Campbell. Look, is a guy like Cam Robinson interesting as a bridge option? Sure, and you try to go tackle again next year, and what's a better class? I know Dan Moore has been thrown out there. I don't think you're getting anybody via trade. I've heard like Jedrick Wills thrown out there. That's a guy that had some off-the-field issues last year in Cleveland. Doesn't really – he's not a definitive answer. They need a definitive answer at that position. It can't be, all right, we got three guys, and we're all going to let them battle for it, and we'll figure it out, and this guy's a converted right tackle, and this guy, is a third-round pick. No. Like, you need to know going in, Drake May's blindside's taken care of. Again, even if it's just we're going to sign Cam Robinson on a one-year deal, and then we'll get back into the draft, or maybe there's a better free agent next year, that's sort of the worst good outcome I think you could have. Jackson would certainly work, but I still think it's Will Campbell. I know people get annoyed that, he doesn't have the ceiling that you'd want at fourth overall. You kind of need to throw that out in this draft because that guy doesn't exist at fourth overall. Carter's going to go before they're on the board. I'd be shocked if Hunter's still on the board for them. I've used this comp. They're very different players stylistically. But if Will Campbell can be Nate Solder, right? A decade of set it and forget it left tackle play. Was he the best tackle in the league? No, he wasn't Joe Thomas, but we weren't clamoring for them to replace Nate Solder. If you get that guy in this draft at that premium position, I think he did well. I think he did. And if you can trade back and get him even better, but again, who are people moving up for? If there's nobody in the draft that's that exciting, it's going to be hard to move that pick.
Yeah. Lots to see, lots to look ahead to. We will hear from a lot of these prospects, actually, except for the offensive linemen who speak on Saturday when I will be out of here and you will be as well. So more to come on that front. I do think the more interesting part will be what we unearth, from the front office, dynamics behind the scenes and what they're prioritizing, how things have changed. And we will hear some of that from Elliot Wolf Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We'll not be doing a side session, as far as I understand, like we had here with Mike Vrabel. All right, rest of the week. What excites you the most? What are you looking for? This could be drills. It could be beers. It could be podiums. It could be prospects. What excites you is your first trip here to the Combine rest of the week? I
mean, just a little bit of everything, right? Just experience it. First time here. Obviously, the drills will be cool. We'll learn a lot there. And just kind of seeing how it all shakes out. Like I'm used to, because again, I've covered this from home, where you can watch the pressers on the streams, you can watch the workouts on TV or whatever. But everybody comes out with their piece on Monday. That's suddenly they've heard a bunch of stuff that they hadn't heard the week before, and just kind of seeing how that plays out in real time is going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, and look, this is a place and a time where you cannot go 10 feet without running into, there's Sean Payton checking into my hotel at the same time. Pete Carroll winking and giving me a finger gun before we started here. I have no idea why. It has nothing to do with me. It's just how things kind of go at the Combine. And a lot of media friends. So stay tuned. Listen to Alex watch him in 98.5 The Sports Hub. Of course, the CLNS network as well. He's going to be the busiest man, already the busiest day in life. It's not even 3 o'clock yet. We will be back at the end of this week, Doug Kai, to spell all of our notes and intel before they reach the Herald, which you will read this piece Saturday morning. Thank you, sir, for taking the time. And
Thanks
we got
for
our
having
home
me.
and home coming up later this week.
That's right. Yeah, I'll have you back on Patriots Hub podcast later this week.
Cool. All right.